Right. Hi. So today we're going to be covering something called the unit circle. It may look very intimidating at first, but it is very easy to use, and it incorporates a lot of things that we already learned and that we already know. So for example, stuff that we've already learned is how to label angles on the coordinate plane. So we always start at 0, and then this is going to go in increments of 30s. Some of them are going to go by 30s and others by 45, but 30 plus another 30 gives you 60, plus another 30 gives you 90, plus another 30 is 120, plus another 30 is 150, and then so on. It goes all the way around our unit circle, okay? The next special angle that I'm going to point out is your 45. So we have our 45 plus another 45 degrees gives you 90, and then 90 plus another 45 degrees gives us 135. And then plus another 45 gives you 180, and it keeps going. So that's where these angles come from. These angles are part of our special right triangles. I'm not going to go deeply into that because I'm just going to show you today how we can apply the unit circle to evaluate trig functions. Okay. Another thing that we know that's on this unit circle is in our first quadrant, our positive functions are all of them: sine, cosecant, cosine, secant, tangent, cotangent. All of them are positive in the first quadrant. In the second quadrant, only sine and its reciprocal cosecant are positive. The rest of our trig functions will be negative. We go into the third quadrant, only tangent and cotangent are positive. The rest of them are negative. And then in the fourth quadrant, only cosine and secant are positive, and the rest of our trig functions are negative, okay? So just to review a few things, first off, it describes here what the unit circle is. A unit circle is a circle with a radius of 1. Okay, so if you notice here from here to here, our radius is 1. So if we go back to our unit circle, we will see that this point right here we have labeled as 1, 0. Okay, and that is because our radius from the center of our circle out is 1 unit. Okay, so that's how we get the coordinate of that point. Up here, this would be our x value is 0 and our y value is 1. Over here, our x value is -1 and our y value is 0. And then last down here at 270 degrees, our x value would be 0 and our y value is -1. And so if you notice underneath these, I do have cosine and sine, and I'm going to explain why. So if we have here, we're trying to get our trig functions. Now, we know that for our trig function, sine is your opposite over your adjacent, opposite over your hypotenuse, I'm sorry. So then this is my opposite, which is y. So it's going to be y over, and then our hypotenuse here is 1. So it's going to be y over 1. Now, when you divide y by 1, when you divide any number by 1, it's just going to be y. Okay. And then for cosecant, cosecant is the inverse of sine, so that means that it is going to be the reciprocal. So we flip that y over and put in the denominator, and it becomes 1 over y. Now for cosine. Cosine is your adjacent side over your hypotenuse. So my adjacent is x and my hypotenuse is 1. And so x divided by 1 is just going to give you x. And then secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So that means it is 1 over x. Okay, so if you notice here, that is why underneath every x value, I have cosine to remind me that my x values are cosine. Okay, so that's what you see there. That's why I have the cosines and the sines under every single number to remind me what that value is. And then lastly, we have tangent. So tangent is opposite over adjacent. So this is my opposite, which is y, over my adjacent is going to be x. So y over x. Oh, there it goes. And then cotangent is going to be the reciprocal, which is x over y. So now what we're going to do is, it says use the unit circle to evaluate the following. So you're going to need the unit circle to complete your assignment. So if you want to go ahead and screenshot this, or if you want to go ahead and copy it down, ignore what we have here to the right. You don't need that section. But right here, you can go ahead and screenshot it. You can copy it down. That way it's going to help you on your assignment, okay? So this first one is asking us for sine of 180 degrees. So what we're going to do is we are going to locate 180 degrees on here. And if we look, and I already have it labeled here, sine is my y value. So sine is equal to 0 at 180 degrees. So that's what I'm going to put here. It is 0. Okay. All right, the next one. Now we have cosecant. Now cosecant is the opposite of sine. If you happen to forget, we do have it right here. You're going to take 1 and divide it by y, okay? Or it's its reciprocal. So if we look here, oh, I forgot to check the angle. It's negative 180 degrees. So remember, negative is going to go in the opposite direction, but it just happens to land at the exact same point. And we look at sine. So our y value is 0. So when we plug this in, okay, we know our y value is equal to 0. So it's going to be 1 divided by 0. And 1 divided by 0 is just going to give you undefined. So undefined. Because you cannot divide anything into 0 groups, or you can't take 1 and divide it by 0. It's impossible. That's why we get undefined for that one. All right, we have another cosecant again. A cosecant is 1 divided by our y value. So we're going to check our y value at 45 degrees. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to look up 45 degrees. So here's 45 degrees. And my y value here is the square root of 2 over 2, but it's sine. And what we need is the inverse, which is cosecant, which is 1 over y. So it's going to be 1 over the square root of 2 over 2. So all we have to do is flip that square root of 2 over 2 over. So it becomes 2 over the square root of 2. Because remember, cosecant is a reciprocal of sine. That means we have to flip the fraction over. Okay, so this is supposed to be our answer. But we have this rule where we cannot have a square root on the denominator. So we need to do something called rationalize. So to rationalize it, we have to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. Okay, that's what's going to get us to cancel out the square root of 2 on the bottom. So on the top, we're left with 2 and the square root of 2. And on the bottom, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is just 2. Okay, we can simplify this one more step. 2 divided by 2. They both cancel each other out, and all we're left with is the square root of 2. So cosecant of 45 degrees is the square root of 2. All right, moving on. Now we have the cotangent of 90. So based off of here, we know cotangent is our x value divided by our y value. Okay, so let me go ahead and scroll up at 90 degrees. We have 90 degrees. So our x value is 0 and our y value is 1. So when we plug this in here, remember our x value is 0 and our y value is 1. Okay, so this time we're doing 0 divided by 1. This is different than problem number 2 because the 0 is on top. So this doesn't give you undefined. This gives you 0. Okay. All right, the next one, tangent of 0 degrees. So tangent is equal to our y value divided by our x value. So we go ahead and go up to our unit circle and we check at 0 degrees. What is our x and our y value? So I'm going to move up. Here is 0 degrees. And I am looking at my x value and my y value. So my x value is 1 and my y value is 0. So I plug that in here. My x value is 1 and my y value is 0. So 1 divided by 0, well, once again, we end up with a 0 in the denominator. So when that happens, this is going to give you undefined. All right, the next one, tangent of 3 pi over 4. Okay, so we have tangent again. And so then that means that we're going to take our y value and divide it by our x value. Okay, and if you don't remember this, it's in this little table right here. If you want to copy that down also so it can help you on your notes. And so we are checking that at 3 pi over 4. So I'm going to look at my unit circle and I'm going to locate 3 pi over 4. And so 3 pi over 4 is right here. And so my cosine and my sine, my x value and my y value, my x value is the negative square root of 2 over 2, and my y value is the square root of 2 over 2. So on here, my y value is the square root of 2 over 2, and my x value is the square root of 2 over 2. So when you take any number, it doesn't matter what number it is, and you divide it by the same number, this will always give you 1. Okay, so this is equal to 1. And actually, I'm sorry, I missed the negative because remember our x value was negative, so it should be a negative 1, not positive 1, a negative 1. Okay, just if you want to go back up and look, we notice right here, this is a negative right here that's in front. Okay, so just be very careful. All right, the next one, this one's asking us for secant of 210 degrees. Now, secant is the opposite of cosine, okay? And if you're not sure, we can check up here. It tells us right here, secant is 1 divided by x. So what that means is we need to take our x value, and we're going to get the reciprocal of that. We're going to flip it around. I'm going to go ahead and write it right here. Secant is 1 over x, okay? Once you figure what you're looking for, we're going to go at 210 degrees. So I locate 210 degrees. Okay, here it is, 210. And so at 210, if we look here, cosine is a negative square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so here it's going to be equal to 1 over the negative square root of 3 over 2. Sometimes this pen doesn't work. I apologize. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So when this happens, all we got to do is just flip over the fraction. We get the reciprocal. It'll be 2 over the square root of 3. And do not forget that is a negative because that's going to make all the difference. So I'm going to go ahead and put the negative here so I don't forget it because I always forget the negative. Okay. And so this is supposed to be our solution, but remember we cannot have a square root on the bottom, so we have to do something called rationalize. So we have to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. So on the top, we get negative 2 and the square root of 3. And on the bottom, when you multiply the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, that just gives you 3. And there's no more simplifying that we can do. We just leave it like that, negative 2 and the square root of 3 over 3. All right, the next one. They want us to find the sine of 270. I know I kind of went and did my work up on this side, but I think we should be okay. So sine of 270, we're going to go ahead and check it out. Sine is our y value. So we're going to look at 270 degrees. Here's 270 degrees. Our sine is equal to negative 1. And that's it for that one. Whenever it's sine and cosine, those are the easiest ones because you just look it up on your unit circle and it's there. Okay, your cosecant and your secant, you're going to have to get the reciprocal. Okay, and for your tangent, your cotangent, you're going to have to do your y divided by your x or your x divided by your y. So those are a little bit more work. So let's look at the next one, secant of 30 degrees. Now, secant is the opposite of cosine. So cosine is your x value. So that means that secant is going to be 1 over x. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and check out 30 degrees. So here is 30 degrees, and our cosine is the square root of 3 over 2. So I'm going to write it down here. It's going to be 1 over the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so when this happens, all you got to do is flip over the fraction. So the 2 will end up being on top, and the square root of 3 would be on bottom. Okay, we get the reciprocal of cosine. Now, this is the exact same problem as this one over here. I have it labeled as number 1 for some reason again. So we have to rationalize this. We can't leave our answer like this because we're not allowed to have a square root on the bottom. So we have to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. So on the top, we get 2 and the square root of 3. And on the bottom, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 just gives you 3. So it's going to be 2 and the square root of 3. I'm running out of space over 1/3. All right, the next one. Here we have sine of -90. So remember, when you have a negative angle, we're going in the opposite direction. So we know that our sine is our y value. So when we look here at our unit circle, -90 is going to go in the negative direction. So if we go clockwise, we end up right here. That would be 90 degrees. So that means that we are looking for our y value here, which is -1. So let me go ahead and push it in here. Remember, whenever it's sine and cosine, it's easy. We just look it up on our unit circle. There's no work that we have to do. Okay. Cotangent. Cotangent, there is work we have to do. We have to take whatever our x value is and we have to divide it by our y value. Okay, and remember, we get that from this table up here. That's where we figure out what we're supposed to do. Okay, so once we do that, we go ahead and look up 270 degrees on our unit circle. And it's -270. So remember, we're going to go in the opposite direction. So we start here. This would be 90. This would be -180. And here would be -270. Okay, and then we're going to take our y value here, which is 1. And we are going to divide it by our x value, which is 0. So here, oh no, it's backwards, I'm sorry. It's x on top, so 0 divided by 1. When you have 0 divided by 1, that gives you 0. And then last, we have sine of pi over 6. Remember, when we have sine and cosine, it's simple. All we got to do is look it up. So sine is our y value. That's what we're looking for. And we're looking for our y value at pi over 6. So I go ahead and go to my unit circle. I locate pi over 6. Here's pi over 6. And my sine, my y value, is equal to 1/2. So that's what I wrote down here. So sine is 1/2. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave it down below in the comments. I also have another video where it explains exactly where all these numbers come from on the unit circle. So if you guys want to go ahead and watch that, it might help you a little bit. It might help you understand everything that's going on with the unit circle. But thank you guys for watching. Bye.